Hopefully I don't kick that water over and destroy that amp in a huge ball of fire. I was going to have a clip of Raiders of the Lost Ark for you guys today, but I started it yesterday, so it's not here. I was going to do a voiceover, and they were going to drop into the pit. Here it comes. We're going to see it for the first time in thousands of years. Get to the floor, snakes everywhere. Didn't do that for Stephanie. Edited that part out, and Victoria. They pull the ark out. Yeah, but what's inside? I don't know. It's gold. Don't you care about the... Yeah, but what's inside? And so today, we're going to raid the lost ark, so to speak. We're not going to have it here, but we're going to look at what's inside the lost ark. Now, I don't know if it's lost. My personal opinion is that at some point, God lifted the ark, brought it up into heaven, so it's up there somewhere. But it could be around here somewhere. Maybe somebody melted it down, or maybe it's hidden in a cavern somewhere for somebody to find someday. When I was little, I told my mom, when I grow up, I want to be an archaeologist, and I want to find the Ark of the Covenant. Because I thought archaeologist meant Ark of the Covenantologist, and I thought that's what that was all about. So what's inside the Ark of the Covenant? In Hebrews 9, 2-5, that question is completely answered. Thank you, Hebrews, for writing that. A tabernacle was set up. In its first room were the lampstand, the table, and the consecrated bread. This was called the holy place. Now we're describing right here the sanctuary of God. The Israelites were told by God to make a sanctuary in the desert. It had all this fabric over the top of it. It was kind of a long rectangle. And at the end was a smaller room where the Ark of the Covenant was stored, shaped like a cube. Same length, width, and height. Behind the second curtain was a room called the Most Holy Place, which I just described a little bit. It had the golden altar of incense and the gold-covered Ark of the Covenant. This ark contained a gold jar of manna, Aaron's staff that had budded, and the stone tablets of the covenant, which may have looked a little bit like this, but probably bigger and with more words. These are styrofoam too. And his was made out of stone. Above the ark were the cherubim of glory, which we talked about in the last lecture a little bit, overshadowing the atonement cover, or the mercy seat. That particular plate of stuff actually represents Jesus, because he's in between God and the commandments. And he's the reason that we don't burn up when God comes near. Above the ark were the cherubim of glory overshadowing the atonement cover, but we cannot discuss these things a great deal now. So there were three things in there. There was manna, the staff, and the Ten Commandments, the testimony. We're going to look at the manna first, then the staff, then the testimony. And that's what this sermon is all about, is what these three things are, where they came from, what they mean, and discuss them in some detail. We're going to look at the manna in Exodus 16:31. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Take an omer of manna." That's about 2 liters of manna. So if you take like a Pepsi bottle, 2-liter Pepsi bottle, he collected about that much manna. "And keep it for the generations to come so that they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the desert when I brought you out of Egypt." So that's why he wanted it in there. And they made a gold jar and they put it in there. I don't know what the gold jar looked like exactly. It was probably pleasant looking. It was gold. The lesson in the manna that God said was, remember, God can grow us out of the most difficult situations, even modern prisons. This is a message for us. Even modern prisons like addictions, depravity, chronic sin, egocentrism, etc. So God said, I gave you this manna when you came out of Egypt. I was the one who pulled you out of Egypt. So take this manna, keep it there, so that when people say, why is the manna in there? I can remind them that the manna is in there because I brought you out of Egypt and I provided for you. I was the one who helped you out of a difficult situation, an impossible situation. You remember, some of you, what God had to go through to get those Israelites out of Egypt. He used a very strong arm, we'll just put it that way. He will even rescue us from this earth to our own promised land. And yes, I do mean heaven. So the manna in the Ark of the Covenant points even forward to that, and that is the manna. The staff. In Numbers 17, verse 8, we see where the staff actually was used, or where it came from. The next day, Moses entered the tent of the testimony and saw that Aaron's staff, which represented the house of Levi, had not only sprouted, but had budded, blossomed, and produced almonds. Now, the reason that Aaron had done this, I will read. Moses brought out all the staffs from the Lord's presence to all the Israelites, and they looked at them, and each man took his own staff. And the Lord said to Moses, "Put back Aaron's staff in front of the testimony to be kept as a sign." Sorry, each man took his own staff. He brought it to Moses, and Moses put all these staffs in front of the testimony to be kept. Oh, now this is already where, I'm sorry, I got mixed up. This is already where all the staffs have already been put together in a bundle in front of the ark. And when Moses went in to pull them out from in front of the ark, Aaron's staff had budded, as we read. The original reason for him doing that was because everybody was wondering and grumbling, who's going to be the leader? And Moses said, God told me that Aaron was going to be the leader. And they said, what? But I want to be the leader. I'm pretty cool. And so Moses said, well, let's ask God to give us a better, like a stronger sign. Whose ever staff, this is dead wood. This is totally perished. Aaron's been walking around with this sweaty palm all over the top of this thing for however many years, and it's kind of like a cane, I guess. It's dead, and God breathes life into it, and it buds. Not only buds, leaves show. Not only leaves, but a blossom, and the flower fully matures and produces almonds. When the Israelites see all their dead staffs back in their normal state with their names written on them, and they look at Aaron's staff, they're taken aback because God has produced a pun. A pun? Yeah, actually. I'll tell you about that in a second. I have one more slide. It showed that God can produce life from a dead thing. It's one thing the staff showed. But it also showed that God chose Aaron as the leader of their tribes. So it made certain to them what the result of his decision, or what his decision was. Now, the heteronym shows up in this verse. If you look at the Hebrew that it was originally written in, the word for almond is mateh, and the word for tribe is mateh. So when it produced almonds, the Hebrews immediately saw, oh, it produced a tribe, and it meant a lot to them. Didn't mean as much to us because we don't speak Hebrew. But it's kind of like a heteronym. This is just an example. Wind and wind, two different words. Wind means wine means bass and bass. I could like come in. I'm touching a bass, but I have no bass up here because I don't have a fishing line. It'd be messy anyway. So that's a heteronym, but God used the heteronym of mateh, almond and tribe, when he did this thing. I think God had originally picked out that Aaron's staff was going to be an almond branch so they could produce almonds because he knew this test was coming a long time ago. So the message for us from the staff: remember who your leader is, God. Now you might notice that everything says remember in it. They're all reminders. Remember who your leader is. So don't grumble about his decisions. Remember, he's miraculous and he's loving and he can do anything. He's the one who gives us the authority. He's the one who is the authority, who picks out our little human leaders and that sort of thing. And if we remember that, we'll have a better perspective on this world. In Exodus 31:18, we look at the testimony or the Ten Commandments for the first time. Not for the first time, but this is just describing when it went in. The Lord finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai. He gave him the 2 tablets of the testimony, the tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God.